Hello, I'd like to welcome you to York College's Law Department's Taste a Day lesson in law. Usually I'd be meeting you all in the classroom for a face-to-face Taste a Day session at York College. This year, for rather obvious reasons, we're going to be doing a virtual or remote session. But I am still going to try my very hardest to make it an interesting, good, useful, fun and informative session. I really do hope that it gives you a little taste or flavour of what we get up to in both A-level and BTEC applied law. I do hope that you've been able to have a quick look at our other PowerPoint, which is an introduction to law PowerPoint. This gives you loads of information, everything you could ever need to know about the two courses we offer here, what we cover, the skills you will learn, and where your A-level or BTEC applied law qualification might take you in the future. Some of you might have already attended one of our two virtual York College open events, where past and present law students talk about why they have enjoyed studying law with us. If you haven't attended a virtual open event yet, there's still time to do so. There are a number of further events over the next few months. You, friends, parents and carers can use these to find out more about college and our courses. To sign up to the next event or one in future months, please go to our website. Thank you. Okay, hello again. On with the next slide. I thought I'd better just introduce myself. If you don't know already from the other events we've had and presentations, my name is Claire Curtin and I'm one of the two full-time qualified law teachers here at York College. We, myself and my colleague Clive, both have teaching qualification, degrees and further professional qualifications in law, and we both worked in the legal professions for a good number of years before we came to teaching. This means that we have something called industry experience. So I'd better get on with it then, hadn't I? I'd better tell you of what we're going to do today. Today I'm going to teach you some police law. We call it police powers. The police have various powers set out in law which allow them to stop and search both people and vehicles in the street, to arrest them, detain them, keep them in custody at the police station where they can interview them, take samples such as saliva, fingerprints, breath tests and other bodily fluids, and carry out more searches, intimate and non-intimate searches. We study these police powers when we learn about human rights. You will learn that everyone has the right to liberty, that means freedom, and this can only be limited, restricted or interfered with in certain situations and where our national laws allow for it. Today, I'm going to teach you about the police's powers to stop and search an individual or a vehicle on the street without a warrant. Well, I know I'm using a little bit of technical information, so I'll just explain to you what a warrant is. Without a warrant means without getting a special written permission to search from either the courts or from a senior police officer. Now, why is teaching you the police's powers of stop and search a useful thing? Well, it's useful because any one of us could be stopped and searched by the police in the street or have our vehicle searched without any advance permission being given. Indeed, it may have happened to some of you already. Some of you may have been randomly stopped and searched on the street. So, it's very useful for you to know your rights. You should know the following: when the police have the right to stop and search, what they must do and what they must tell you when they stop and search you or your vehicle, and what your rights are. This is useful information. So, If you go away today and you decide law is not for you, at least you will go away with some knowledge, some information which you can use in life in the future. You will have been empowered because law is all around us every day in all that we do. Moving on. So here we are on slide 3 of the presentation. Here we have some images of individuals being stopped and searched on the street. Images or pictures can help you to get a good idea or grasp of what we're going to teach you today. It kind of helps you to imagine what we're talking about. Moving on. And on to slide 4. So every good lesson should have some aims and objectives. We should know what we're going to cover and what we're aiming to know at the end of it. Where are we going to? You should be given an idea of what information you're going to be taught, basically what we're going to tell you and cover. And we should also be getting you to think about what's good and bad about the police having these powers to stop and search individuals on the street. And in addition, we're trying to get you to see these laws in context. Try and see how these laws might apply in real life situations, say perhaps in a global pandemic. Okay, here we go. What we'll need to do is we need to flick through the aims and objectives. If you have a quick read now, you'll see what we're aiming to do with this lesson and where we're going. What we're going to get you to think about. And I'll say it again, we're going to teach you all some real life law and give you something which you can take away with you, even if you decide not to study law at York College. We've taught you something useful. Thank you. So here we are at slide 5. If we were sitting face to face in a taster day session at York College, I would show you the following clip to give you an introduction to the police powers of stop and search. I would introduce the clip to you. It is a YouTube clip. It was made by students from another college somewhere in the south of England. It's quite interesting because they're acting out and interpreting a stop and search situation, and it was made a few years ago. I would explain that this is a fun and informal way of introducing the subject matter. I would also have to tell you that in law we sometimes have to be mature and understand that particularly in criminal law, bad things have happened and that there may be references to drugs, violence, etc. But we deal with it and talk about it in a mature professional way, a bit like lawyers. I also need to explain that this clip does make reference to possession of drugs. You do not have to watch this clip, it is entirely optional. If the clip does not play in the PowerPoint, I would encourage you to copy the link on the next slide and then watch it on YouTube yourself. And then don't go away, there's plenty more stuff to look at and enjoy. Come back to the PowerPoint after you've watched the clip and rejoin me at slide 7 afterwards. So here we go, let's try and play the clip and see if it plays. I need to give you a lawyer's caveat or warning. I have checked with college quality and marketing teams to ensure that I'm able to use this clip. Here we go everyone, let's get ready for the banging tunes in the background, off we go. So here we are at slide 6, year 11 students who might be interested in studying A-level or BTEC law next year, or who just might simply be a little bit curious about the law and want to watch our police powers presentation. I'm going to click on the link and hopefully you will be able to see the YouTube clip. If not, and if there is any technical difficulty, I would recommend that you copy the link on this slide, paste it into your browser and watch the YouTube clip separately on your own. I would then recommend that afterwards you come back and rejoin the PowerPoint at slide 7. Here we go, everyone, fingers crossed it works. Okay, so I'm sorry. I'm guessing that you have had to watch the short YouTube video by clicking on the link yourselves, or copying and pasting the link into your browser. I really do hope that you went to the effort to watch it and that you enjoyed it. Boom, 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 boom. That's the noise of the banging tunes behind the YouTube clip. I'm sorry, I'm embarrassing myself. Well, I hope you enjoyed it. It's just a bit of fun. And now I'm actually going to teach you some stuff. I'm going to give you some core information and facts about the law on the police's powers to stop an individual on the street and possibly search them as well. But before we move on, here are a few quick things for you to consider. I want you to think about, what did you learn from the video? If we were in a classroom at your college on Taster Day, we might have a little bit of a chat about it now. So I'm going to just ask you to think about these things. When can the police stop and search a person in the street? Did you get it? It's if they believe that they have on their person or in their vehicle prohibited articles. Prohibited means banned. And prohibited articles actually do include weapons, articles or tools for committing burglary, large commercial fireworks, the explosives are dangerous. And in the scenario you've just watched on YouTube, the police suspected that the young people had illegal drugs on their person. The powers to stop and search for drugs are contained in the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971. Okay, next thing for you to think about. Can you also remember any things a police officer has to tell the person they are stopping and searching? I'll give you a moment to have a little think about it. Okay, so was it their police number, the station they come from, and a reason for the search? Well done. Okay, and final question or thing to think about. What does the police officer have to provide the suspect with at the end of the stop and search? Well done you. You got it. They have to provide them with a written record of the search with all the court information on it. Well done you. You got it. Time to move on, and I'm going to do the teachy stuff now. Here we go. So here we are, Year 11s at slide number 8. I'm now now that you've watched the interesting YouTube clip, going to start to teach you some key facts and information about police powers to stop and search an individual on the street. So here is key fact number 1. The first piece of information I'm going to give you is who makes the rules about the police's powers to stop and search, and where can these rules be found? Well, the rules or law on the police's powers to stop and search an individual are contained in an Act of Parliament. Parliament made the rules, and they are set out in an Act of Parliament called the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984. In the trade, we call it PACE. P for police, A for and, C for criminal, and E for evidence. The Police and Criminal Evidence Act, or PACE 1984. And on the slide, you can see a picture of Parliament. You can see the heading on the Act of Parliament. And I think that's all on this slide, so we'll move on. So here we are on slide number 9. This slide sets out the second key fact on police powers to stop and search, and that is that the police can only stop and search someone in a public place if they believe that they have prohibited articles. And we've already discussed that prohibited articles include weapons, tools for burglary or committing other criminal activity, or having a large commercial firework, which would have quite a high level of explosives within it and could be dangerous. Okay, so we've got that down to a T and we can move on to the next one. Here we go. Key facts 3. The next thing we need to consider is, what is a public place? Well, the Police and Criminal Evidence Act tells us what counts as a public place for the police to stop and search someone in. Now, I guess if you think about it, and if we were in the lesson or in class or in a taster day session at York College, we would have a quick discussion and have some guesses and answers about what might count as a public place. To be honest, I guess we're all quite good at deciding what our public place is at the moment, because in the current situation, with the whole of Yorkshire being in Tier 3 with the COVID restrictions and regulations, we're only allowed to meet a certain number of people in public outside places. So we're getting quite good at all of this, and I imagine you would be able to guess this right. So let's have a go. It includes parks, car parks, a garden, providing it doesn't belong to the suspect, etc. Okay, on with that one. Now we're getting through these slides now, aren't we? The next key fact or key thing we need to consider about stop and search is key fact 4. The police can only stop and search an individual or their vehicle if they have, and I've put it in red, reasonable grounds, which means reasons to suspect that the person has prohibited articles. They can't, under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, just randomly stop and search anybody with no grounds or reasons for it. So what kind of things would be grounds or reasons? Well, they can only stop and search a person under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act if they had facts, information, intelligence, phone calls from the public, tip-offs, they've got surveillance evidence, etc., which told us this or gave an indication of this. The police must not stop and search randomly on the street on these grounds. They shouldn't stop and search. It's not reasonable grounds to stop and search an individual based on their race, their appearance, knowledge of their previous convictions. That is not allowed. So we're getting through these slides now, aren't we, Year 11s? We are on Key Facts 5, which is slide 12. So the next key thing, the next important bit of information you need to know is that, let's have a look, the police officer must provide the suspect with certain information. So the person they stop and search, they must tell them their name, or it's their police number, and the station, the police station they come from. They must take a note of the suspect, the person they've stopped, name, address, and their race or ethnicity. This is to stop the police searching people on the grounds of their race, ethnicity, or their background. They must tell the suspect the reason why they are being searched. So these reasonable grounds have to be communicated to the person they're stopping and searching. Okay, on with key fact 6. So if they're searching somebody, what could the police officer ask the suspect, the person stopped, to remove in terms of clothing? Well, let's have a think about this and a look. The police officer can only, if they've stopped and searched an individual on the street under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, they can only ask the suspect to remove outer clothing, which includes gloves, overcoat and jacket. Now you might be interested to know that if they felt that they needed to do a more detailed search, say if they wanted them to remove further clothing, which would include shoes, etc., they would have to take the suspect to the police station. They could ask them to go voluntarily, and if they refused and they had got reasonable grounds, they might have to consider an arrest at that time. But at this stage, they're only allowed to ask them to remove outer clothing or garments. Imagine they can't stop and search you on the street and ask you to drop your trousers and stand on the street in your undies, can they? That just would not be right. Okay, moving on. So key fact 7 now, year 11s. What else does the police officer have to do? Well, you may have picked up on this watching the YouTube video. The police officer must always provide the suspect, the person who's been stopped and possibly searched on the street, with a written record of the search. Now, you might wonder why this is. This is because if the police have failed to comply with any of the requirements under the Police and Criminal Evidence Act, the search will be unlawful. The suspect can make a complaint to the Independent Police Complaints Commission. They can also ensure that any evidence which was taken through an unlawful or improper search is not used as evidence against them. It is what is known as inadmissible evidence. It can't be used in a case against them, and it cannot be used in court. So, the fact that evidence obtained through an improperly performed search can't be used is a big incentive for the police to comply with all the requirements and carry out the search, and very carefully and very properly following all of the rules. And I'm sure you can see that now. We're whizzing through these key facts now. I hope you've understood it, and I hope you can remember some of the key requirements and rules. So, this slide is a little bit repetitive. I've just spoken to you about this. The key thing that you need to know on key fact 8 is if the police officer has not followed the rules, then the search is technically unlawful and they can't rely on any evidence they may have obtained through the search. And the suspect, the person who has been searched, can make a complaint. So here we are now at our activity. Activity, you say? What am I supposed to do? Well, I'm just going to present you with a little activity, and I'd just like you to think about it. We'll try and pretend that we're in class in a face-to-face taster session and we're all thinking about the same thing. So, once I've taught you the key rules about an area of law, here it's the police's power of stop and search, what might you then be asked to do with it? Well, in A-level law and in BTEC applied law, you're asked 3 main different types of questions. The first type of question is a describe or explain question. This question would just ask you to describe the police's powers on stop and search, and you would simply write down all the key facts and information that you knew about it. It's remembering and regurgitating. Easy peasy, I think. The second type of question is an advise question. For this type of question, you get a little story or a scenario with some characters in it, and sometimes they get up to no good and do some very interesting things. And what do you have to do then? Well, you have to use your knowledge of the law, here again it will be your knowledge of police powers of stop and search, to advise or tell the characters in the scenario what will happen to them and how the law will affect them. The third and final type of questions we get in law are discuss questions. I'll say that again, discuss questions. For these type of questions, we might have to think a little bit. We have to evaluate the area of law we've covered. This means talking about what's good and bad with the law. So let's get on with using what we've learned about the police powers of stop and search. We're now going to use it to advise some characters in a little scenario or story. Next slide, please. Well, year 11s, we're nearly there. Do 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 do. That's me singing the EastEnders theme tune. Really badly. So here we have a scenario which is essentially a story with some characters in it. Anyone recognise my characters? I've borrowed some names and places from a popular soap, EastEnders. I hope they won't mind. Let's read the slide together now. So here we go. Here I go. Phil and Billy are out in Walford Square when PC Osborne, number 224, sees them. They are standing outside the Arches at 2 a.m. in the morning, wearing black hoodies and carrying large sports bag. Do they look suspicious? PC Osborne asks them to stop, which they do. He tells them his name, number and police station, but does not give them a reason for the search. He asks both of them to remove their hoodies and jeans. He then searches their bags. He finds a screwdriver, hammer and crowbar in Phil's bag, together with a balaclava. That's one of those hats which covers your face, goes right over your head, got a little circle cut out and conceals your identity. He seizes the articles. That's PC Osborne. He seizes the articles. Now the questions you've got to ask yourself, with your knowledge of the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984, with your knowledge of the rules on the police powers of stop and search, is the search lawful? Can you use your knowledge of the police powers of stop and search to explain whether this is a legal search or not? Okay, so what I want you to think about is the search lawful? What have the police done right? Where have they not followed the rules on stop and search? I'll give you a few moments for you to reread the slide and think about the scenario yourself or yourselves. I'm hoping that there's quite a few of you watching this, and then I'll run through it. So you're having a little read? You're getting your heads round it? Are you thinking back to what you've learned about what the police should say, what they should do, what they can and can't do? So let's have a bit of feedback. I guess it's only me feeding back, but if you have a think about it at the same time and see if our ideas match up, that's fantastic. So what's right about this stop and search? Well, if I look at the scenario, PC Osborne has given his name, his police number and the police station where he's based. All of that's good. That's following the law. Oh, what are PC Osborne's grounds or reasons for the search? Well, the scenario doesn't really make this clear. Remember that the police must have reasonable grounds or reasons for stopping and searching an individual in a public place. Their reasons must not be based on someone's appearance. It should be based on facts or evidence. So, what do we think? Is there anything wrong with the search? Well, it might be a bit boring if there's nothing wrong with it. There's a few things that the police have not done, and there's a few things which the police have done which might make the search unlawful. The first thing I've got to think about is I think if they stopped and searched them on grounds of their appearance, black hoodies, etc., and carrying large bags alone, that wouldn't be a good reason. They would have had to have seen the way they behaved, had a tip-off, some evidence, etc. What else do we need to consider? Well, the police, PC Osborne, has not given a reason for the search. That makes it unlawful. There's another thing as well. PC Osborne has asked the suspects, Phil and Billy, to remove their hoodies and jeans in the street. The search is taking place in a public place, so you simply can't do that. You can't ask someone to take off their hoodie and their trousers in a public place. What if they were going commando and only had their jeans on? It's just not right, PC Osborne. That alone is going to make the search unlawful. And finally, let's think about it. PC Osborne has failed to provide something. Yes, he's failed to provide a written record of the search. So here we have it, Year 11s. The search is unlawful and the items seized cannot be used as evidence. Phil and Billy could make a complaint about this stop and search. I'd just like to say well done to all of you. You've used your knowledge of the law to advise on a scenario. Excellent, law students, well done. So as I've already explained, we don't just learn cold hard facts and information about the law, we think a little bit about it too. We think about what's good and bad with our current laws. What's fair, what's just, what's right, what's wrong, what's outdated, what's unfair. So, here are some thought-provoking questions for us to consider. I've got some things that I'd like you to think about when we talk about the laws on the police powers of stop and search an individual on the street. So many would argue that the current law in the Police and Criminal Evidence Act 1984 does achieve a fair balance between the competing interests of the police and of the suspect, the person who's being stopped and searched. They would argue that they allow the police to carry out early investigations, to do their job, and to investigate and prevent crime. They would also argue that the Police and Criminal Evidence Act also has safeguards. It ensures that the suspect's rights are protected too, by requiring the police to provide certain information and take certain steps. However, you need to know that there are grave concerns that the police may stop and search on appearance and ethnicity, and they may stop and search certain people in society more than others. I would like you to think about the questions on the next slide. Think about what your answers to those questions might be. I'd just like you to have a go. So Year 11s, here we are at our thought-provoking questions. The first question asks, which age group do you think is the most likely to be stopped and searched on the street? Have a think and decide if it's A, B or C. The second thing I would like you to consider is which gender is the most likely to be stopped and searched on the street. And the third is which ethnic group is the most likely to be stopped and searched on the street. Have a think about it, have a guess. Some of you might already know the answer because it's been quite topical, the subject of stop and search, during the lockdowns and during the recent global pandemic. Okay, the answers are, question 1 is A. Younger people are more likely to be stopped and searched. The answer to question 2 is A again, male. And the answer to question 3 is B. People from a BAME background are more likely to be stopped and searched than other ethnic groups in our society. Thought-provoking questions there. So when we study law, we talk about some big ideas about law, and you'll see from our earlier questions and our earlier consideration of what's good and bad about the laws on stop and search, that laws should aim to be all of these things. So if we move to the next slide, we'll have a look at them. But before we go, you could probably have a quick think yourself. What do you think laws should be? We've already used the words fair. Is there anything else you can think that we talked about, or have you got any ideas about what would make good laws? What's the characteristics or features of good laws in this country? So before I leave you, here's just a few big ideas about what laws should be. What should be the features of good laws? And it's really interesting to think about these things, as lots of laws are made about us quickly over days, weeks, months, throughout the global pandemic. Laws have been changed, laws have been passed, which affect our daily lives. So, what should good laws be? Laws should be made by the people whom we've chosen to make them for us. And in this country, laws are made by MPs and the House of Lords, people in Parliament, and our MPs are democratically elected, chosen, voted for by the people to make laws for them. Laws in this country are also made by judges who are seen as very independent. They were made by the European Union, but that's changed now since we left the EU fully on the 31st of December 2020. Laws should be clear, easy to find and easy to understand. They should seem relevant and appropriate too. Laws should be fair and should be applied in the same way to everyone. We should have a consistent approach, and that in itself is fair and just. Some would argue that laws should be based on sound moral principles, ideas of what's right and wrong, good and bad. But other people would argue that that's not absolutely the case, because people's ideas of what's right and wrong are very subjective, they're very individual, and they differ from person to person. They differ between different people, different groups in society, people of different faiths and religion, people of different heritage, background, culture, different origin. So some would argue that laws might be based on sound moral principles, but they should also be based on an idea that they are there to make society work well and function and keep us all safe and protect our interests. So if we turn to the last point about what good laws should be, there's the idea that laws should strike a fair balance between protecting the rights of individual citizens like you or I, but also protecting society as a whole. So there's just some big ideas for you to take forward with you. And when you hear about new laws being made which affect you and everyone else in society, you can have a think. Are these good laws? Are they made by the people we've chosen? Are they fair, just, clear, relevant, reasonable? There you go. So I've given you a little bit of optional stretch and challenge information about law. I've already explained that the police already have powers to stop and search individuals for drugs under the Misuse of Drugs Act 1971. In some very limited situations where permission has been given, the police can have the power to stop and search any individuals without the need for reasons. This usually only applies for a 24-hour period, but it's been applied during lockdown. I've also put on this slide that concerns were raised over the police's use of stop and search powers during the lockdown, first wave of the global pandemic, and I've given you some extra information on stop and search. There's a BBC fact sheet that you can click on the link or copy and paste it into your browser, and you can look at the BBC graphs on stop and search in London. It sets out the different groups, ages, gender, backgrounds, ethnicity of people stopped and searched within a time period in London. So I hope all of that is interesting to you. It's very much optional. You can ignore it if you want to. Moving on. Well, thank you to every one of you that's listened to this presentation. I really hope that you've managed to watch that YouTube clip, and if not, please try and do so now. It really is an interesting and quite amusing watch, and it does make everything we've taught you today in the PowerPoint a little more relevant. So my job is largely done for now, and it's over to you. There's some extra stuff for you to watch, have a look at, engage with if you choose to do so. So what else have we got for you in law? Well, we've put an activity and information sheet on Stop and Search along with these PowerPoints, the Introduction to Law PowerPoint and the Taster Day lesson. We've got another introduction to a case of cannibalism and murder, which you can briefly watch. Have a flick through the cannibalism. If you join us for the new student activities later in the year, optional again, we'll be doing some non-fatal offences, teaching you all the rules on assault, battery, actual bodily harm and GBH. We'll talk to you about where our laws come from in our new student day sessions, which come later in the year, and which will be something else that you can engage with virtually, or if things are a little bit more back to normal, who knows, you might be able to join us in college. We will also be able to talk to you there about an introduction to law and the global pandemic, and we'll also be giving you an introduction to juries. What are juries? Who can be a juror? Are jurors good or bad? Okay. Along with our activity and information sheet and the 2 PowerPoint presentations, there's a useful sheet with links, clips and wider reading for anyone who wants to find out anything more about A-level, BTEC law. Have a look at some fly-on-the-wall documentaries on training to be a barrister, the work of solicitors, our UK Supreme Court judges, and watch a video which prepares people for doing their jury service, sitting on serious criminal cases in the Crown Court. Well, that's pretty much me done now, I'm sorry to say, although you're all probably relieved and thinking, oh, well, now she's finished, at least I can go and have a look at another subject. I'd like to thank you for taking the time to watch our PowerPoint presentations and hopefully watch the YouTube clip as well. I hope that you'll leave us today with a greater understanding of what studying law at level 3 at college entails and the various options open to you. I would also hope that you leave with a good knowledge of your rights should the police stop and search you on the street. I'd be very happy to answer any questions that you may have. If you've got further questions about A-level or BTEC law, please don't hesitate to send them to college, to the email address you've got for the college admissions team, or to me. And I'm going to read out my email to you now. My name is Claire Curtin, that's C-L-A-R-E, Curtin, K-I-R-T-O-N. And if you've got any questions that you want to ask me about the law course, please forward them to, this email address is all lowercase. That means small letters. Okay, so my email address is ccurtin, that's all one word, C-K-I-R-T-O-N, @ York College, all one word, all small letters, .ac.uk. I'll say that again for you. ccurtin@yorkcollege.ac.uk. I'm happy to hear from anyone. In fact, I'd be delighted. Please don't hesitate to contact me. If you do want to apply to do law, please note that you don't have to make a firm decision on whether you want to do A-level or BTEC. You can put down on your application A-level law / BTEC applied law, and you can ultimately make the decision when you get your results if that's what you prefer to do. Please remember that it's open to you to apply to a number of colleges and a number of school sixth forms, and again, you don't have to make your decision about where you want to study for year 12 and 13 until you've got your results or gradings. Please rest assured that we will look after you in A-level and BTEC law. We like to look after our students, and we offer a wide range of help and support. So thank you again for your time. I'd like to wish you all the very best, and I do hope to hear from you or see you again. Kind regards. Bye bye.